The views and opinions expressed on this program are not those of Norfolk State University or WNSB-FM. Thank you for listening.
It's Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
Virginia's Young Black Leaders, Governor Northam's apology tour is too little too late. Many feel that Northam didn't seem to understand the severity of what he did, and after nearly 2 weeks, many young black community leaders are still calling for him to resign. Hi, everybody. I'm Benita Adams, and today on Hampton Roads Voices, we're going to talk about the dynamics of African Americans and our willingness to easily forgive. Do you think African Americans should so easily forgive the blackface scandal of the governor and attorney general? What about the sexual assault charges of Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax? We're going to talk to some experts here in the studio, and we definitely want to hear from you, too. Next on Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
It's Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Benita Adams, and today we're looking at, for some Virginians and young black leaders, Governor Northam's apology tour is considered a little too late, a little too little and too late. But many feel that Northam didn't seem to understand the severity of what he did. And so we're going to be looking at the dynamics of African Americans and our willingness to easily forgive. What can the governor and other officials do to win back your trust? Is it enough for the governor to say he simply didn't know? And what about the sexual assault charges of Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax? And do you think African Americans, do we forgive too easily? We're going to talk about all those things today, and we definitely want to hear from you. Call us at 757-823-9110. Joining us in the studio today, we have Mr. Eric Majette. He is from Eric Majette Enterprises, and he's also the pastor of Thrive Church International in Virginia Beach. Pastor Majette, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me today.
So we're really going to continue some of the conversation that we started last week. And this really is such an important topic for us to discuss in terms of forgiveness and healing from even racism in the African American community. When we first found out about the blackface scandal from the governor, so many leaders and spiritual leaders and politicians and so forth, and people in the community said, he should resign, he should resign. And now some are going back. And so we want to look at us as a people in terms of forgiveness. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, actually, I'm the senior pastor and founder of Thrive Church International in Virginia Beach. Also the founder of Eric Majette Enterprise, a consultant, an executive, an author. Mm-hmm. So I've been truly blessed to have operated several gifts.
Absolutely. And so I love the perspective that you're going to bring to this conversation.
Exactly.
And a little bit later, we're going to be joined by a couple of other guests. So right now, we'll just go ahead and get started. Now, tell us, we're just going to jump right in. Forgiveness. What is it?
Forgiveness is very powerful, number one. In all the four Gospels, Christ talked about forgiving. Even when Christ was on the cross, he said, forgive them for they know not what they do. In the most critical time of his descending away. Forgiveness is really intentional. You have to be intentional when you start talking about forgiveness. Actually, forgiveness is more so for the person that's not trying to forgive than the person that actually violated the person that needs the forgiveness. There's been historically some medical studies done in regards to forgiveness. It's hard to not forgive and hold on to anger and bitterness for years and years to come. But as Christians, forgiveness is not optional. He forgives us every day. We repent every day. There's a power of repentance where God has forgiven us for our sins. Now, there are a difference between, I think, forgiveness and forgetting.
What's the difference?
Well, you don't forget, but you have to forgive, right? The Bible also talks about using wisdom, having wisdom, and not going back into that same situation again, doing the same thing, expecting different results. So with forgiveness, it's really a twofold thing. It's for your restoration of yourself, restoration and peace of mind, as well as reconnecting with the Father.
That's interesting, because I have heard just what you said, that forgiveness is not for the person who has caused the offense, but is for the person who feels offended.
Exactly.
And that is but that's hard.
Yeah, most people don't see it that way. They see it more so of holding on to it becomes a safe place. A lot of times, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. That's how they're able to deal with it and say, I'm not going to go back into that situation. I'm not going to forgive them. They violated me. But think about it for a moment. Let's be real here. Think about all the things that people have forgiven you for in a lifetime.
Right.
Right? Whatever they are. We all got issues. We all have things we need to be forgiven. We've all have made mistakes in life. So as Christ forgave you, you have to forgive others.
Okay, joining us in the studio now, we have another guest. He's Mr. Lemuel Williams, a licensed professional counselor from National Counseling Group. Mr. Williams, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, tell us a little bit about what you do as a licensed professional counselor.
That is such a very broad field, counseling. I specifically work with couples and trauma, so couples who've experienced some sort of trauma and families. Done a wealth of work with children, did guidance counseling for a bit, school counseling, counseling in churches. So lots of counseling.
And why is counseling so important? We're talking today about forgiveness and healing from racism in the African American community. And this conversation is sprung from what we were talking about last week. And that, of course, is the blackface scandal of Governor Ralph Northam and Attorney General Mark Herring. And also we're going to put a little bit about that in terms of Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. Why is counseling or the forgiveness piece so important to our conversation today?
As was explained very well before, forgiveness, honestly, is not really for the perpetrator. Oftentimes, individuals feel, well, if I forgive, they're going to get away scot-free. That's actually not accurate. The reality is, well, actually, I have an analogy that I like to use, okay? So if I say I have a stone, and I'm going to throw this very big stone at you, and it hits you, and you're upset with me, you're probably going to pick up multiple other stones to throw at me because you're not just going to hit me one time, right? I have to feel it, okay? So you pick up several smaller stones and throw at me and they hit me, okay? But let's say our parents come and our parents say, every stone that you threw, you need to pick it up and put it back right where it came from, okay? Who's going to have the least amount of work? Me, right? I had the one big stone, but you had multiple stones.
Right.
You may not remember where you got it from or where it fell. And so the premise of that is that oftentimes we sin against others or hurt other people in multiple different ways, and the sins meted out against us, we reflect them out on other people because we've been hurt, and we use it like a justification. Well, if this didn't happen to me, then I wouldn't have done this. You know, or if my dad never beat me up when I was a kid, I wouldn't be angry and beat up other people, you know. And so the reality is we can't use the sins that were done against us as excuses for bad behavior with the sins that we mete out to other people, because I'm responsible for my stone, you are responsible for your stones.
So, Eric, that makes me think of the question, all right, so just because I was beaten up as a child or abused as a child or something happened to me. So the excuse that we hear sometimes in light of this blackface scandal is he was the product of his time. Everybody did it. Minstrels, all of those kinds of things. How do we take that as saying you can't use that as an excuse for not knowing?
Well, I think there's a difference for not knowing after a certain age of time, and time has passed. But I do basically see how a person can be raised in a certain environment and with a certain background that know nothing else but that if that's all that they knew, they participated in activities during that era that was not conducive to what we are looking at today. But as you grow and become responsible as an adult, you know right, you know what's right and wrong, right? You grow into that. I think that people can be redeemed. I think there's opportunity for people to learn, you know, from their mistakes. I think that if you learn from your mistake and you actually has basically agreed that, hey, this was an issue with me back, then, but it's not an issue today, became and accept accountability. For your action. Accountability is very key to this. Accountability, accept accountability for your actions.
I think that's an important part. We'll look at that a little bit more and unpack that after our break. Again, our number to call, 757-823-9110. We're talking about forgiveness and healing from racism in the African American community, especially in light of the blackface scandal between the governor and Attorney General Mark Herring. Stay with us. We'll be right back on Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. Today on Hampton Roads Voices, we're talking about forgiveness and healing from racism in the African American community and the dynamics of our community and our willingness to forgive easily. In our studio today, we have Pastor Eric Majette. You're such a Renaissance man. I'm not sure which one to say, but Pastor Eric Majette from Thrive Church International, Virginia Beach, and Majette Enterprises, and Mr. Lemuel Williams, a licensed professional counselor from National Counseling Group. And we definitely want to hear from you, 757-823-9110. Now, Eric, right before the break, we were talking about redemption, and you were saying that you can understand that forgiveness is for the person. Both of you were saying that.
That's correct.
But you also said in terms of when you're a child, of course, it's a difference. But when you are the age of accountability and you become an adult, you really can't use the excuse, I didn't know, or I was just a product of my environment. You have to move past that. Why, again, is that so important?
I think that's very important because basically, if you hold on to saying I didn't know or that was just my environment, that's an excuse at that point, right? I think that as we grow in life, as we grow from one age to another age, I think that the lessons in life should teach us things. And I think that from a redemption perspective, that in order to be redeemed, you have to let go of the past and grab on to what's new. Also grab on to the times that we're in now and not continue to hold on to the past times that we were in. And that's a process also. And also I think that you have to be very intentional about change.
Right. So why do you think then that at first even the religious community, they were saying, no, the governor needs to resign, and within a week or so, they came right back full circle and said, no, I believe he's a good man, and I don't think he should resign. Why so quickly, do you think?
I think what happens is that in any situation in life, when something just happens, as tragic as that was, as big as that was, people have a tendency to respond quickly without thinking. And then our value system kicks in, right? Particularly as Christians, the forgiveness part of us kicks in, particularly as pastors and leaders. We love people very hard and we forgive a lot. We have to be able to forgive and have patience with people. So I think what happened probably that, when you go back to what you believe in, your belief systems from a spiritual perspective, you don't have a choice but to forgive. Then you look at the history of the person from the time and the things they've already has done to redeem themselves, or how that happened, the local community, things that he was engaged in, his current belief system,
right,
based upon not just words, but also based upon actions. Because words are one thing, but actions are more powerful than words. So I think that when you go back and you look at it, you say, okay, everybody at first was like, okay, it's over, shouldn't have did it. And I agree that it should have never happened. I agree that it should have never happened. But I also agree that everybody deserved an opportunity to be redeemed and to be forgiven.
I like that you say that, but I want to ask our callers, again, call us at 757-823-9110. Do you think that the governor seemed to have remorse or regret? Did he seem contrite? Did he seem as if he really was sorry for that? What about when our leaders said, well, no, I don't think he should resign. He's a good man. He's a decent man. And just in terms of being African Americans in our community, do you think we're very easy to forgive others? Give us a call, 823-9110. So in looking at that, Mr. Williams, in terms of how the African American community and so forth turned it around, I like that you said, it seemed to go very quickly, but I like that you said sometimes we have that emotional response at first.
Exactly.
And we just jump on the bandwagon, and then we start to reflect after that. And we go, wait a minute, maybe I should think that through a little bit. Has that been the case? Do you see that as coming from a counseling perspective?
Of course. You know, our natural reaction is to protect ourselves and protect those that we care about. And anytime you feel slighted against, it's almost like an instinctual drive, you know. Think about yourselves in your own relationships and families. You could talk to your family any sort of way, right? And let the neighbor or somebody else say something about your family immediately.
That's right.
No, not my family, but you were just cursing them out the day before, right? And so that's a natural part inside of us. If we feel our community is threatened, or we feel who we are in the sense of being, then naturally you want to protect. And then we stop and think, oh, you know, maybe it wasn't as big. Let me take stock and figure out, get all the facts, the information. And as you get information, that starts to cut through the initial emotional response, you know. And so there's a whole concept of like the wise mind, right? Everyone has a rational mind, and you have an emotional mind. The rational mind has facts, has information, it's going to gather that, and it's going to make things just based off of logic, right? The emotional mind is all feelings. You know, I feel hurt, I feel upset, I feel excited, I feel driven, right? But we can't exist in any one mind solely, right? Dysfunction comes from that. If you're all logical without emotion, then how could you really experience life? Because, you know, you have a great meal, you have a feeling about it. If you just eat it, it's just for food, right? But then you can't be overly emotional. You can't be all emotion, because you act off of emotions, and technically, if you understand how emotions operate, it blocks signals in your brain from actually responding logically, right?
So you have to have that balance.
You have to have both, right? And so the wise mind is being aware of both my emotional and my logical self, and then making decisions out of it.
That is so fascinating. We have a caller on the line. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from? Hello? You're live on the air.
Hi. My name is Raymond. Thanks for having this discussion. I appreciate it.
Of course. Raymond, what is your question or comment?
Yeah, my question is this. From what I've seen and heard and read, the governor has not really acknowledged his fault in all of this. He only indicated that, yes, he did at some point did this contest, but the person, he don't believe the person in the blackface is him. But he did do a Michael Jackson contest. So he really didn't admit anything. And his when he did that interview with, I forgot the lady's name, he just sounded even more stupid and ridiculous. The only reason why I say leave him there is simply because of politics.
Okay.
You got number one, governor. Number two, Justin Fairfax. He's looking at they want to get him out of there, and I'm talking about certain Republicans. And then you got the other guy. He also did some blackface stuff. So you can have a clean sweep, and who's in the fourth position to take control? The Republican. Right. So no, he has to stay, and he has to do some redeeming in the community, and some real stuff that needs to be done in Virginia in order to really show, hey, he did learn from his mistake. But no, he has to stay, unfortunately. But because if the Republicans had their way, they would run roughshod in Virginia and change the voting districts, which would totally destroy any progress Democrats or anybody else would want to have.
Raymond, thank you so much for that call. We really appreciate that.
No problem. Have a good day now.
Okay. Eric, he said that he doesn't feel that the governor really, when we were talking about that whole remorse, regret, contrition, he said he didn't hear that. He didn't sense that.
Well, I can see exactly how he feel the way he feel, to be honest, initially. when he said he wasn't sure whether it was him or not. I know everything I've done since I was like 7 years old. Basically, I can remember, whether it was me or not. I think that he's being careful with his words at this point, because when you say one thing and then you change to another thing, people tendency to say, okay, you're not telling the truth, the whole truth. So he's been very careful with what he put out there now. And like you said, looking at some of the facts, but I still think that he do need to come forth. I think that he do need to do something to redeem himself in the African American community. And I think that according to what I've read, some things that he's put in place already, or going to put in place with his organization, his cabinet, to make sure that some of those things are done with our community. And it's going to take a minute for him to continue to have the African American community to trust him.
Right, exactly.
That's not going to happen just by doing that.
And so I ask our callers, what would it take for the governor, the lieutenant governor, and also Attorney General, Mark Herring, to win your trust back? If you were on the side that said they should all resign, and then perhaps you've changed your mind, you said, let's keep them and work with what we already have, what would it take for you to say, I trust them again? Give us a call, 757-823-9110, 757-823-9110. Now, Mr. Williams, it is interesting that he said that he feels that the governor should do something. He should redeem that. How important is that just in terms of the whole notion of forgiveness? And you were saying the balance that we need, not too much emotion, not too much logic.
Well, in action, sometimes I find angers people a lot more than trying and making mistakes. So it seems like we have a natural penchant to understand mistakes. Okay, a person made a mistake, but at least they're trying.
Okay.
Not doing anything, it leaves space for anyone to fill in the blanks, right? So again, I use another example. I like examples, right? Let's say you have a girlfriend, right? And you fell asleep. You're always supposed to go out for Valentine's Day, right? And she's calling. Now you're embarrassed that you fell asleep. You didn't, you made a mistake, but you don't want to seem like a bad boyfriend or whatever. So you don't really say anything about it. You just bring flowers and say, hey, I'm here now. Where were you? What happened? Don't worry about that. It doesn't matter if you did something to make it up, right? The fact that you're not speaking to the issue, you're in trouble, right? Because already her brain automatically is going to fill in the blanks for anything. We fill
in the blanks, yes, we do.
And we fill in the worst of the worst,
yes, we
right?
do.
Very easy. And so I think not speaking directly or doing things directly to address the perceived slight that's done causes more upset and more anger, more emotional responses, because then we fill in the blanks. Well, the reason why is because this, or he must be guilty because he did this.
Because he did that.
And it just creates a void for more problems.
I agree. We have a caller on the line. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Victor, and I'm in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay, Victor, what is your question or comment, please?
Well, my comment is that I just was listening to your last caller, and they should go. But what they should do, what the governor should do, if the lieutenant governor decides to leave, he should appoint a black woman to that position. Because he has the power to do that. Then once the woman gets the governor position, she can appoint a lieutenant governor.
So what would it take for you to feel that our governor has truly been redeemed in your eyes, Victor?
You can't trade evils.
Okay.
What's done is done. But you can't just say, we can excuse them because we want this. You have to be true to what you believe in.
Okay, and hold fast to that, you're saying?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Victor, so much for calling. We appreciate that. So, Eric, our caller, Victor, is saying, we need to just change the whole thing. But what both of you were saying, both you and Mr. Williams, you were saying that, of course, that it's action. We want to see something to feel that you really are sorry for what you've done and not just making excuses.
Exactly. And I think that's going to require going into some of the local communities.
Okay.
And being present in those communities so they can really get to know the person and really understand where they are coming from. Mm-hmm. I think that what he just mentioned a few minutes ago about putting a woman in that position, I don't think that's going to solve the issue because we still have to think about, let's think about this for a minute. If he's gone, what is going to cost us? Mm-hmm. As in, what is going to cost Virginia? What is the benefit for him leaving versus him staying? Mm-hmm. And we have to understand that it's a political thing going on outside. It's not just about the forgiveness part. We have to forgive from a Christian perspective, but there's politics involved. There's different things that's going to be affected by the decision that is made. And we have to understand that also. Are we willing to give up what we've just worn for this? Now, I do believe in value systems. I do believe in ethical. I do believe in character. I believe in all of that. But at the same time, I would rather work with someone where the glass is almost full and got a quart of water left to fill it than start at the bottom again and try to fill that glass up.
Because you already know what you have.
You already know what you're dealing with.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, and go ahead, Mr. Williams. What were you going to say?
I was going to piggyback off of that. You know, wise mind, logic, and wise mind. So you have the logic and emotion, right? The emotion of it is, okay, so this happened. He did this atrocious act against us. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we weren't really the ones he was thinking of when that happened, right? It was his own lapse in judgment or, childishness, immaturity, ignorance, that sort of thing, right? At the same time, he is doing a job because it is a job. So this is a job position. And oftentimes, we have this argument in the psychological field. Do you have to be a nice person to be a therapist or a psychologist, right? I would always say yes because I like nice people, right? But the truth is you could learn the skills, you could do your job, and you could approach and handle situations even if you're not the nicest person, right? Just like doctors. We all have nice doctors and we have some not nice doctors, right? But they all can do the job, right? And so the thing is, if he is doing a job and he's willing to do the job, can we separate personal feelings, emotion from it?
And that's what's so important. Right. Sometimes you can separate the personal feelings, the man versus the job. Right. And sometimes it's so connected or so egregious that you say, I cannot make the separation. Right. And that's what I ask. Give us a call, 757-823-9110. Can you make that separation between the scandal of the blackface and of also saying that he's a man of his time, and then the 360 turnaround of people saying, no, he should stay? What is your opinion on that? 823-9110. This is Hot 91.
It's Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. We're having a lively discussion here with Mr. Eric Majed and Mr. Lemuel Williams, and we're talking about forgiveness and healing from racism in the African American community. We have some callers on the line, and they've called at 823-9110. We'll go straight to the phones. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Wayne.
Wayne, Wayne, what is your question or comment?
Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach. Wonderful.
Yeah.
What is your question or comment, please, Wayne?
I would just want to chime in a little bit because, like a lot of African Americans in Virginia, I was torn between him leaving and him staying, and I still am at this point. Initially, when he made the first press conference, said that it was him, I was on the side of him staying.
Oh, okay.
Then he came with the second news conference and denied it was him. I was on the side of him leaving. And now that he's come up with a plan, because we need relief in our communities,
right,
as far as the economic disparity and also with the high rate of crime. So if he can come up with some tangible initiatives that we can actually benefit from, I'm on the side of him staying, because we all make mistakes. We all have a past.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are saying that, Wayne, we want to see some action now, and maybe this will spur him into action. Wayne, thank you for calling. We appreciate that. We have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your name, please, and where are you calling from? You're live.
Hi, Veronica Washington from Newport News, Virginia.
Yes, Veronica, thank you for calling. What is your question or comment, please?
Basically, I just have a comment. You know, I completely understand us being enraged as a culture for what he did. Blackface is not acceptable at any time. But I do also know that I'm glad that I'm not held accountable for what I did 30 years ago. There has to come a time when I'm excused from what I did by the behavior that I've created after that. He's been spoken very well in the medical community. I have a girlfriend who he literally was her son's doctor, and she praised him, an African-American woman, and she and others have praised him. So I think that his work going forward are speaking for his behavior past, and I do believe he's wholeheartedly sorry. Agreed, he shouldn't have lied. He should have just owned it. But sometimes when you're afraid and don't know what to do, you will tend to lie. It doesn't excuse what he did, but I think we need to get past that. And we, as an African-American culture, need to hold ourselves accountable for us allowing people to treat us that way. As long as we continue to use the words we use about ourselves on the radio and treat each other the way we do, we allow another culture to treat us differently. And we have to respect ourselves first.
Well said. Veronica, thank you so much for calling.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you. We have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your name, please? You're live on the air. Hello, you're live. Caller, are you there? I guess that call has been dropped. So, Eric, we'll go with what Veronica and Wayne both said. One is that and that goes back to the actions you were talking about.
Exactly.
If this spurs action for our specific community, things to be done that perhaps may not have been done or maybe done more slowly, this is something good. And Veronica saying she would hate to be held accountable for something she did 30 years ago, and we need to take personal responsibility. Give some comments on that.
Yeah, I think that the Bible also talks about, things changing to be for the good for you, right? You know what I mean? And I think that what Wayne talked about, this could be an opportunity, right, for our community to actually have an opportunity to get resources or get the things that we need from an economic perspective. Our communities have been hurting for a long time.
Right.
Right. I think that what Veronica said was basically so true, that I don't want to be held accountable for what I did 35 years ago. Matter of fact, could you imagine if people held you accountable for everything that you did and posted it on Facebook or put a picture up and didn't forgive you for that, like Christ forgave us? Can you imagine if he just took a picture and put a video of all the stuff that he knows about us
and other people
and nobody else knows about it? We'd be like, oh no!
Please
but
don't post that.
Don't post that. That was 35 years ago.
That was it.
Right? But he forgive us for our sins,
and we need to forgive as well.
And we need to forgive as well, because this could be an opportunity for our community. And I think that sometimes people, particularly as leaders, sometimes things have to happen to shift.
Yes, the shift.
You the direction that you really should be going.
I love it.
This shift could benefit the African American community.
It could. Right,
with the resources and the programs that he talked about in engaging the African American community.
We have a caller on the line. Caller, what is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
I'm calling for Norfolk.
Okay, and what is your name, please, if you choose to give it?
My name's Gary.
Gary, what is your question or comment? You're live.
My first comment is that, the Bible says that these things will come to curb if they read the Bible, about the government. And for Virginia government, he deserves a second chance. That's his past.
Okay.
I mean, for everybody cocking the wrong statement, about his past, shouldn't be his past, like the brother just said about the Bible. Everybody should be forgiven and should love your enemy and pray for your enemy. I mean, think about the people whose leaders today in Norfolk not doing anything to help the poor people, but putting them out to their projects. They put paraphernalia, drugs into the area. They know what's going on. Think about the leaders the ones that they are already, the elect is not doing their duties and jobs. They're coloring up stuff. They're always talking about a shutdown. It shouldn't have been about a shutdown. Not even when Martin Luther King had fought for our civil rights. They talking about shutdown. I mean, come on now. You know, everybody deserves a second chance, man. That's all I'm just saying. They should do something for the community, help the people, you know, stop all this tragic stuff that's going on over these 50 states of the world, and stop playing games. You know, I mean, you got some good licensed people out here in law enforcement, in hospitals, lawyers, and judges. That some people is taking the academic out of it and turning it into negative because they live in that life where the Bible saying to this day, who you want to serve.
Absolutely. Gary, thank you for calling. We so appreciate you. I understand that. Thank you, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you, Gary. Okay, Mr. Williams, he's saying, all right, we need to forgive. We have to understand that, as we were just saying, that maybe this is a catalyst for something good to happen, and we just need to move on. What do you think?
Well, you know, like Eric was mentioning about having everything splayed out on Facebook and everything that we did. And honestly, I would have more business if that was the case. So. But, you know, one thing that did stood out to me when Victoria, I believe her name was, when she spoke, and she spoke about displaying the way that we want to be treated. Mm-hmm. Like, that's very powerful because, you know, I can't tell you how many clients or families or individuals all over the world I work with, and the number one thing is the lack of boundaries, right? And if you think about it, we don't often think about how what we portray and what we do is in turn shaping how people deal with us and treat with us, you know? So I'll hit you with another example, all right? So you come to my office, and the first time you meet with me, you say, hey, you mind if I smoke? Right? And now I, wanting to be the cool therapist, right, say, sure, of course, no problem, you know, here's an ashtray or whatever, right? And so you go ahead and you do it. Let's say 3 months down the road, I'm like, I just can't take this anymore. And so you come in and you pull out, about to light up, and I say, don't do that in my office anymore. I can't be around smoke. I'm allergic to it. I'll die if I need to. What is the first reaction or first thought going to come to your mind?
Well, he let me do it before.
Right.
This is exactly what you're going to think.
Are you going
Why
to
can't
feel
I
like,
do it? Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure, no problem. Or you're going to be upset with me.
You're going to be upset because now you're taking something from me.
Right, definitely, right? Now, the reality is, I was allergic to smoke the whole time, but I wanted you to like me, or I thought it was cool. I wanted to be the cool person, right?
Okay.
So I did not set that boundary the first time. Okay? So what I did was enable you doing something to hurt me.
Right.
And then now that I'm setting a boundary saying, don't do that, you have every right to be upset with me or to question what I'm saying. So why shouldn't I treat you the way that, why shouldn't I treat you like that now when that's been okay this whole time?
Very interesting, talking about setting boundaries. We have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your name, please? Where are you calling from? And you're live on the air.
Hi, my name is Samantha. I'm calling from Norfolk.
Okay, Samantha.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What is your question or comment, please?
I had a comment on, obviously, not a question. If I was to say historically where we are and where we stand from slavery and Jim Crow, we're literally like 2 days away from slavery. We're 1 day away from Jim Crow. If we were looking at it a timeline, it's absolutely ridiculous to expect someone, especially if they're long past, especially if they're older and elderly, not to have done something that would be drawn into a negative light, considering the society and the culture that they live in. So to hold him accountable for something that happened 30 years ago is kind of ridiculous and not anywhere near to solving the problem of racism. Pointing his hand at somebody and saying you're a racist and you're a racist does nothing against the institutionalized problems that we suffer from today, the systemic issues that we suffer from. So pointing him out and losing his job, that's great. That's what he's going to do. Go back to being a doctor getting paid. So how does that really affect racism? It doesn't. It does nothing. It's like throwing a stone into the ocean. So in all reality, maybe we should put our focus and attention on the real problems that come from the institutional racism that we suffer in this country.
Samantha,
and that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for your call and for your comments.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Williams, I know you're going to have to leave us in the next couple of minutes, but in terms of what Samantha said, it's almost personal responsibility, like we mentioned before.
Yeah. You know, and she's talking about like transgenerational patterns of belief systems and culture, and there's systemic racism. We kind of talked a bit, you know, on the break about how there was a lot of policies set in place by those same, individuals who've been there and their forefathers or whatever that haven't really been addressed. There's still a lot of laws and a lot of things set in place that don't help, right? And they could be addressed, but it's almost like the status quo. No one likes to change things and rock things unless, as we mentioned, something big happens to then propel her. So instead of being angry and getting rid of, to then reset it and start all over again, the energy might be better served in, well, let's now use this to actually make a difference.
To make a difference. So tell us where we can find you if someone might want to get in contact with you.
You could look me up online. I'm on Psychology Today. Just type in my name, Lemuel Williams. We have contact information there, or you could connect with the National Counseling Group. We are a Medicaid program, really, so we deal with a lot of the lower socioeconomic or individuals who have disabilities and stuff. And so once you have a Medicaid plan, we'll be able to help you out. Because, not everyone accepts. So.
Okay, we've just heard from Mr. Lemuel Williams, a licensed professional counselor at National Counseling Group. Mr. Williams, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Okay, and joining us soon, right now we still have Mr. Eric Majette from Eric Majette Enterprises and also the pastor of Thrive Church International in Virginia Beach. And joining us soon will be Dr. Robert Perkins, the chair of the Sociology Department, Norfolk State University. Eric, in just a couple of minutes, just respond to what Samantha said.
Well, I think that she's absolutely right in her thought process that, we are dealing with things in our community, that's more important right now. And this could be an opportunity, right, to be able to use this opportunities to impact our communities.
Absolutely. And Eric, I know that you have to go as well, so tell us how we can find you.
I'm ericmajette.com, and you can also reach me at 757-550-1850, and you can also find me on Facebook.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure having you
Thank
today.
you.
And that, again, is Mr. and Pastor Eric Majette from Eric Majette Enterprises and Thrive Church International in Virginia Beach. We'll be right back after this break on Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Benita Adams, and on Hampton Roads Voices tonight, we're talking about forgiveness and healing from racism in the African American community. We've had a lively conversation so far in terms of the dynamics of forgiveness just in our community alone. Joining us right now, we have Dr. Robert Perkins. He's the chair of the Sociology Department here at Norfolk State University. Dr. Perkins, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So our conversation has been great. And again, we want to hear from you. 757-823-9110. What would it take for the governor to be forgiven in your eyes? Do you give him a pass because he did not know any better, as he said? What about the listening tour? And is this a catalyst in your mind for him staying and doing some things in the African American community that need to be done? Give us your feelings on that. 757-823-9110. So, Dr. Perkins, let's go back just a little bit in terms of, as a sociologist, how do you see forgiveness?
Oh, good question. Well, I don't know how I see it as a sociologist, but a man of faith.
Okay.
How I see it is when someone has offended you, that you clean your heart completely from it. So therefore, when you come in contact with that individual and you interact, nothing rise up, no hate, no malice, no anything, because it's out of your system.
Okay.
So that is forgiveness, as I was taught by my grandmother and my mother. Okay?
Right.
But when you talk about forgiveness in terms of sociology and the social sciences, we're looking more at systemic oppression or systemic trials and tribulations. And so we would have to look at the system and see if the system has changed. And so when you talk about forgiveness in that angle, it's a group impact. So has the group that has been offended or have been marginalized, have they been freed from their oppression? So if they have not been freed from their oppression or freed from the inequality that exists within that marginalized group, then the system itself has not made what we would term as repentance. So therefore, forgiveness is not in accordance because the oppressive nature of that system still exists.
So So we can jump in and say we know that the system hasn't changed that much in terms of systemic racism and the impact that it's had on the African American community. Then if that is the case, or since that's the case, how do we wrap our head around this blackface Ku Klux Klan sexual scandal? How do we wrap our head around that?
Well, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
So if you get through one, how do you deal with the other?
That's right.
And, I listened to a lot of the callers that called in before, and I was really impressed with the passion that's coming out of the voices of the 757. But the angle that really angst me is not only the blackface, but standing beside someone in the KKK robe.
Let's not forget that.
That is so hugely important. So even if you didn't know about blackface, I know doggone well you knew about the KKKs.
You did.
Who didn't know about KKKs? So first of all, I don't even understand what he is saying. I truly don't. I don't understand when he said, I'm a different person back then than I am now. I don't know what that means. Because you told me that wasn't you. So therefore, you're saying that you weren't that racist person. So you're saying you're different now. So what are you different from? I'm just confused.
Right.
And so how do we wrap our minds around the blackface, around the KKK, and around the sexual scandal? Well, if you just take the first two, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I don't know how you not wrap your mind around it, particularly in the state of Virginia, with the history of Virginia and African Americans. I mean, it is just, the writing is on the wall. Let's be honest. It's on the wall, so it's up to us to read it. Now, if we want to ignore it, we can. If we want to forgive it, we can. But the writing is on the wall. Now, is there a forgiveness in somebody who's done something 30 years ago? Of course there is. But generally, forgiveness starts with, okay, my bad. I made a mistake. I did not hear that from him. What I'm hearing from him is that wasn't me.
That wasn't me.
But he was ready to moonwalk. I mean, I
saw that.
I'm just blown away about the whole thing. I truly am.
So I was going to say it as a statement, but the question is, should we be surprised that something like this came out, even if it wasn't the governor and the attorney general? But should we be surprised at all? We do live in Virginia after all.
I think it's good that we're surprised.
Interesting.
I think that shows progress.
I love it.
When I was introduced to Governor Northam, it was by Bobby Scott. He brought him on campus for homecoming. And he said, hey, brother, come over here. Let me introduce you he's going to be the next governor. And that was my first time meeting Northam. And I never even heard of him before, to be honest. And because Scott said that this was a good guy, I was like, okay, let me give this guy a really good look. And then everything I heard about him since seemed to be on the up and up. It seemed to be down for the cause. And he visited our campus several times since then. So where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this. So this is ground zero for you, in my opinion, because of what happened with that scandal. So why were you going to CBS and Gayle King to talk about it? Why didn't you come back to Norfolk State?
Interesting.
Come back here and let the professors on this campus interview you. Let us ask the hard questions. You look Virginians in the face. You come to the people that was offended by your racist statements and your racist actions, and then let us deal with that. And I thought that there was such softball questions to him. Such softball. And maybe it was because she was detached from the state of Virginia, so it didn't impact her like it's impacting us, like it impacted me. Because when I got the call to say that this has happened, I said, no, it didn't. That's not him.
Wow.
I defended him. I said, and then he came out and said it was me. I was like, oh my God, because I truly believe that it wasn't him. So my point is, the first question that should have been asked, that still has not been asked, is, have you been affiliated with the KKK?
Wow. Interesting.
And I need to know that. I need to, because if you have been, then now I understand what you mean by the statement, I was a different person then.
That is fascinating. What do you think about that? 757-823-9110. I know, of course, in the last week or so, the emotional response, of course, and you and I talked about that, Dr. Perkins, it was an emotional response. Get them out, get everybody out. Let's start all over again. But now we've caught our breath. And we've thought it through, and we've looked at this, even the whole notion of forgiveness, and we say, well, maybe not. But again, we do need to ask the hard questions. And I'm asking you, what would it take for you, our listeners, to be able to hear these hard questions? And are you saying that, yes, it did happen 30 years ago, and we should be able to move on past that? 757-823-9110. But what about Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, Dr. Perkins? Are we looking at that differently because it's allegedly sexual assault? Are we looking at it differently because he's a black man? Are we looking at it differently because it's innocent until proven guilty? Are we looking at this differently?
I think yes, and all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it holistically and looking at it from a societal point of view, it's hard not to make the argument that white men seem to be forgivable and black men seem to be condemnable.
Wow.
In our society. And because here you have one person with clear evidence that actually said it was him and then made some retribution. Yes. But he actually, so that's factual.
Yes.
Then you have another man who has just been alleged, not to say that anyone is lying, that the women are lying. I'm not saying that, but I'm just simply saying it's been alleged, and he has said that it did not happen. But yet we have condemned the black man and tell the white man, oh, we forgive you. Let's fix this.
Is that something in our psyche? Is that something in our culture, in our background, in our religious upbringing? Where does that come from?
Yes.
Yes.
It is. Because even everyone, I know in my community, grew up with the saying, you can catch more bees with honey.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and we have adopted it because forgiveness was our power.
Mm-hmm.
That was the resource we had. We didn't have money. We didn't have the social contacts. We didn't have the networking. We didn't have the opportunity to pick up the phone and call the governor's office and say, make this happen. Or we couldn't call big universities and say, okay, give my child a seat. We didn't have any of that. But what we did have was the power of love and the power of forgiveness. So now that we have other resources and other tools, so the question does come up, do we need to utilize other devices in order to make things right?
Fascinating. We have a caller on the line. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
Hello.
Yes, you're live on the air.
Yes, my name is Lorraine, and I'm calling from Newport News, Virginia.
Okay, Lorraine, what is your question or comment, please?
I didn't have a question. I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I have gotten to the point where, like Fannie Lou Hammer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. We could keep on picking little pockets to try to deal with racism, but it ain't going to work. It's just time to get down to the bare nitty-gritty and call everybody to the carpet. Choose one person because of the era they made, that's not going to solve it for me, and that doesn't do anything, but it's like a distraction from the biggest problem. We all need to...
Okay, Lorraine, I think you went out just a little bit, but thank you for calling. I appreciate that. She says you were sick or tired and being sick or tired.
Yes.
What do we do about that, though, Dr. Perkins?
We have to keep trucking. When she said that, I immediately thought about the old hymnal, I ain't nowhere tied. You know, we have to keep fighting. We have to keep struggling. And but I really, really love what she said because she put a voice to the exhaustion that we feel about racism. You know, how much more? How do we get around this thing? And as soon as we conquer one part of it, seems like another part rear its head.
Yes.
You know, but I'm just not under the belief that there are good people on both sides. I just don't subscribe to that. And I agree with her. America has not dealt with racism and what it means and what it has done in our society as a whole. We have not. And we keep sweeping it under the rug, and sooner or later it's going to explode. But it explodes in pockets.
I was going to say in bits and pieces and starts and fits. It does. Something comes up. We talk about it. Here's a conversation. Then it dies down like the tide. It goes away. Oh, whew, we've dodged that one. Oh, I'm so glad that's done. Can we just get on with the business of getting on with the business?
Exactly.
And then here it comes again.
But that's proof, because every time something comes up, we all say, oh, this is going to be the big one.
This is it.
This is it. This is the big one. And it turns out not to be the big one. But she's right. That pain is real, and that exhaustion is real.
That's right.
And I wish I had a better response to how to handle that. But the reality is we can't give up. And I also would like to just add, when he took this picture and is in black, I don't know which one supposedly is him, the blackface or the one in the KKK robe. But that was during the time when blackface had did a resurgence in America, because it went away in about the 60s. And it did a resurgence in the 80s.
Yes.
And it resurged on white college campuses.
It did.
In order to block black students from attending. So this is the time that he took that picture.
Wow.
So here again, it will fall ignorant on me to not acknowledge that. And so he was actually part of the systemic oppression of educating minority and marginalized people in our society.
That's amazing. Let's go to the phones. We have one caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name and where are you calling from, please?
My name is Prentice Dupree, and I'm calling from Newport News.
Okay. Would you turn your radio down just a little bit?
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. And what is your question or comment, please?
I had a comment. I just wanted to throw out there that in some sense, you could say that we look at forgiving people as, hey, I forgive you for what you've done, but we never really forgive them completely. It's more as a I forgive you for a certain thing, but we can never forget what they've done.
Right.
That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you calling. Do we have to forget? Can we forget?
Well, I appreciate Mr. Dupree calling in and offering that. I don't think forgetting is part of the forgiveness process.
Okay.
It's just that the inks are no longer there. The grudge is no longer there. The pain is no longer there. That I'm going to get you back is no longer there. But that person has revealed themselves to you.
Right.
So you have to understand that's who that person is. And hold that forever, because if you forget that, you're going to be in the same situation over and over again. And so our past president, Bush, he screwed up the mantra, but you fool me once.
Right.
Shame on you. Fool me twice. Shame on me.
It's my fault.
Yeah. So let's not forget, but let's do forgive. It's not one and the same.
It's not one and the same. It's almost, I believe that Maya Angelou said, when a person shows you who they are, believe them.
But she also said the first time.
The first time. I was going to say that. She said the first time. Yeah. So give us a call. What are you thinking about in terms of forgiveness, especially in the African American community and in light of what's been going on with our Virginia politics? The number is 757-823-9110. This is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. We have a caller on the line. Let's go straight to the phones. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name and where are you calling from, please?
My name is Melissa. I'm calling from Portsmouth.
Melissa, what is your question or comment?
Well, I had a comment. I just wanted to say that racism is deeply rooted in American history. It's deeply, deeply rooted in our history. And it seems like black people are always the ones that have to forgive. Like it goes back as far as slavery. With them with the Bible, you have to forgive. You have to forgive, and they always issue their little scripted apology, and we're supposed to just say, okay, well, they said they were sorry. It's not going to happen again. To me, that seems like an abusive relationship. It's like you do it, you continue to do it, and then you just keep saying, I'm sorry, like that's just supposed to make it better. And it doesn't. It shouldn't be no reason why in 2019, me as a 32-year-old woman, my children have to see this type of stuff still continues to happen. And I think that we have to stop being so passive and always wanting to be so quick to forgive instead of just holding them accountable and letting them know that we're serious this time.
Wow. Thank you for that comment. I really appreciate that, Melissa.
Thank you.
Melissa's almost saying, why do we always have to do the forgiving? Look, I didn't do anything to you. And that is interesting. And again, almost we were talking about that during the break. Yes, it sounds like a abusive relationship because I saw you when I was dating you, you hit me. But then I said, oh, no, you were sleepy or drunk or tired. And I said, oh, no. And I let it go. And now it has happened. And now I'm in the hospital. So that is so interesting that she says that.
Yes. It was almost if Melissa was in the studio with us.
I know. Melissa, you would not believe this is exactly what we said.
Yes. And I completely agree with that. I don't know of any other groups or any other circumstances where the victims have to always be the one forgiving. The victims is always the one that hold the burdens of fixing it. Mm-hmm. The victim is the ones that always have to go back and pull their lives together and move on because that son of theirs were killed in the middle of the street for no reason. The victim responsibility has never been laid on any other group or any other individual or whatever before. But when it comes to African Americans, we are just supposed to sop it up. We're supposed to forgive and we're supposed to make good and we're supposed to just move on. So I agree with Melissa. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't forgive. Please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that we have enough resources in our pockets now to exercise our rights. Wow. We no longer have to hide our feelings. We no longer have to wait for someone to speak for us. You know, we don't need that person to ride in and save the day. We can do those things now. And I think it's up to us to make sure that Governor Northam and the Attorney General and also Justin know that they have power. And by the way, when we talk about these individuals having power in the state of Virginia, let's not be confused by that. The power rests in the position, not the person.
Not the person. Interesting.
So all the stuff that he wants to do or say that he's going to do now for African American community can still get done even if he's not in office because he doesn't have the power. The power is in the position. That is the difference between power and authority. You know, authority is legitimated. So even if you're not there, the show goes on.
The show goes on. And I think that's such an important point, Dr. Perkins, that you made, because I think we are confusing that if Governor Northam says these things will be done, he will do these for our community, for us. If he's not there, it won't get done. And so perhaps, maybe not completely, but perhaps that is a part of why stay, because now look, he's going to do all these great things for us. And if he leaves, then we're going to have to start all over again, which I understand that thinking though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I understand that thinking too. And I understand, people don't want to start from scratch. Trust me, I get that.
Yes.
And there's a big part of me that don't want to do it either. But all at the same time, we have to look at the larger picture. We have to, because what we do right now, it really does impact the next generation.
It does.
And I just, as a sociologist, I just cannot let go of what I know. I understand that he was I understand he was a part of a system that tried to prevent African Americans from getting educated. I can't stress that enough. So here at this great institution, Norfolk State University, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying? We welcome all people with open arms and we try to embrace. So I can't imagine going to another institution where there are groups of people that are saying, no, you don't belong and you cannot have our education. You cannot be competitive with us. That is something that really needs to be addressed, and he needs to address it. Here again, I said he needs to come back to ground zero, which is Norfolk State, and let's have that conversation.
We have a caller on the line. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
Joe, Norfolk.
Okay, Joe, what is your question or comment?
Well, my comment is I found myself having to forgive him. I kind of forgive quick, some mistakes early, but I understand what the brothers and sisters are saying. You know, we got to hold them accountable, and I guess partly my question is, you know, what do we do? How do we hold them accountable? And I know, you know, you got voting and things of that sort, but like most people know, you know, it's these things, you know, we trusted him. You know, people educated themselves and went off what we thought were, you know, good standards, values, and but you know, the political system here just continues to slap us in the face. And I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, so.
Okay.
But one of the things I find myself doing is often I can get overwhelmed by the bad media and upset. You know, I don't know if any white people are listening, but I could tell you, you know, there's a time sometimes when we really, black men really get frustrated and hurt bad. Because of, you know, it seems like every time we turn around, it's like we're not shooting and killing you. It's mass rates or anything like that, but it seems like every time we turn around, it's like somebody just say, you know, black is just not enough, black is nothing. So it can get overwhelming. But I found myself forgiving him for that reason, because I didn't want to be overwhelmed by it, because you know, I wanted to start, you know, hearing people and listening to him and seeing where he came and people were saying. And I think people were getting different experiences with his asking or confessing or talking about it or whatever. I'm not sure. I really not listening to it that much, because, like, it is what it is. Like, you know, it's like somebody said, you don't trust them. You don't trust people. You trust them for what? You trust them for what you know they're going to do or what they're capable of. Does that make sense? That sound like something you heard before?
Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying.
You try, like, once you know what they're capable of and what they do, I mean, that's just what it is. But as a Christian, you know, we hope for another country. We hope for the kingdom. We're hoping and we're looking towards the standards of moral excellence that God set. So, you know, we often, in that spirit, can find ourselves forgiving and moving on. But like Brother said earlier, you do remember. You do have to put it, you know, logically. You know, you have this down. This is a tangible now. This is something I have history. I have statistics. I have facts to show that you are not showing up for me and not doing the right thing. One of the things about being a believer or understanding God and understanding logic and reasoning, you understand there's a social part of that. Not
well, may I ask you a question? Yeah, to the caller.
Right.
I forgot your name, caller. What's
Joe.
Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in. Joe, what is forgive? When you say I have forgiven him, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that you're going to vote for him? Does that mean that what he has done has been erased from your mind? What exactly does that mean when you say I have forgiven him?
That means that what you did is, or where your mindset is not is that I understand it was your ways or what you've been taught, or you know, it was not you. It's not you created in the image of God. These are the flesh and the desires and the forces about us that we choose doing. I do, like I've done something, you know, wrong. You know, what I'm looking for is people to give me another chance to redeem myself, to practice good behavior or be who God made me to be, not, you know, my circumstance or my mistake or He made me to be. So it is a part of, you know, me letting go of the flesh, the part of me that wants to get vengeance.
Interesting.
That wants to retaliate, that wants to, you know, hold something against him, which holds me down. But it's bigger than me. So I forgive him because it's bigger than me. It's a man, this is a husband, this is a father, this is somebody. We need to be at their best in society. We need to be at their best as a leader.
Joe, thank you for that call. I'm going to have Dr. Perkins elaborate a little bit and answer your question a bit. Thank you so much for calling, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate what Joe said about forgiving, because he brought another angle to it, and which is don't allow that to give him a second chance.
Okay, right.
That's basically what Joe was saying, and that here again is grounded in religion and in his understanding of what Christians are supposed to do.
Right.
But I want to remind everybody, including Joe, that there are two types of forgiveness. Again, you know, you have the personal forgiveness, and then you have the systematic forgiveness. And the systematic forgiveness is, okay, what's this track record? What has changed? Have you alleviate the oppression from the oppressive? And so those things are still standard.
Right.
But in terms of forgiving him personally, Joe makes some really, really strong points.
And that's a lot of what we've heard in terms of the turnaround within the last week or so. He helped my grandson when he was little. He was my pediatrician. Right. I know him from church. I met him so-and-so in play. So it's the man aspect of it, not the other aspect of it. So looking at, and I think that dichotomy, that difference, and showing us that could be separated is very important. It's very important. Yes. But Joe said something that Dr. Perkins that I thought was interesting too, is about, and I wrote the question down, how do we hold them accountable then? Mm-hmm. How do we hold the ones we're talking about, Attorney General Mark Herring, Governor Ralph Northam, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, how do we hold them accountable? If we say, okay, I forgive you, everybody makes mistakes, that was years ago, so, but you still need to be held accountable, how do we do that?
Well, we do that at the polls.
Okay.
That is the best way. That's our voice. That's the one place where we all are equal, no matter if you make $12,000 a year or $12 million a year. Mm-hmm. At the polls, we all get one vote. That's where we all are equal, and that's where we have to show up, and that's where we have to make them accountable and hold their feet to the fire. But here's the problem. Mm-hmm. Americans are notorious for forgetting.
Yes.
What happens today, we're not going to remember in July, let alone in November of next year, 2020.
That's right.
We do not have long memories. And guess what? Politicians bank on that.
Yes, they do.
Because I'm going to get in trouble now, but I'll just say that somebody else said it and it wasn't me. But I just knew that everyone who approved the tolls for a tunnel that's been there longer than I've been alive was going to be out of office the next time, but they forgot.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We do forget.
And so it's the same thing that we just have very short memories, but we do need to hold them accountable. And maybe not unfortunate, but the way we do it is at the ballot box,
Absolutely. Yes. And what do you think about that in terms of forgiveness, in terms of holding our elected officials accountable? Give us your thoughts. 757-823-9110. This is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Benita Adams, and today on Hampton Roads Voices, we've had a very lively and insightful conversation about forgiveness and healing from racism in the African American community. And we've thought about what it means to forgive and how important it is. In studio, we have Dr. Robert Perkins. He's the chair of the sociology department at Norfolk State University. Dr. Perkins, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we have heard a lot of our callers talking about things that happened, things 30 years ago, and thinking about time period and a person being a product of their time. But when do we, and then we start talking about holding someone accountable, but when do we start to hold a person accountable, even though it was 30 years ago, even though they're a product of their time? When do we say, but you should have known that?
Right. Well, when it comes to racism, we do have to take that into consideration, the space and time and what it meant and how it resonated and how it looked back then. You know, people are more aware of the consequences of racism today than they were, let's say, a long time ago, 30 years ago. But African Americans were very aware of racism and the consequences of racism throughout our struggle. So, but what we're dealing with here with this blackface and the KKK robes, that is not something that's fallen deaf on anyone. Mm-hmm. We all understood what that meant. We knew what that meant, and they knew what that meant when they were burning crosses on the front yard, when they were shaking people's homes, when they were refusing to allow black kids to get into schools, and when they were blocking little old black women from getting to the grocery store. We knew what that was. When they were tolling us when we were trying to get to work, we knew what all that was, and they knew what that was. So let's not mistake that from people not being reared correctly or people not understanding the power of the word, the N-word and all. Let's not get that confused to what we're talking about. You know, even with the lieutenant governor, he understood the value of a woman's body.
Yes.
And I know this is alleged, but I'm saying, so we cannot get that confused with his aggressiveness, whether he did it 5 years ago or 20 years ago when he was in college. He understood rape was rape. He understood that.
Yes.
And if he didn't understand that, then he really shouldn't have been lieutenant governor. And if he really did those things, saying this should be his last job in the state of Virginia. So now keep in mind, this is alleged. But I just want to, let's not get confused. So we can extend olive branches and we can forgive and we can move on. But playing the ignorance card is not what's going on here.
Do you feel that forgiveness, and I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, especially even the first hour, do you think that sometimes we feel as African Americans obligated to forgive because it's in our nature? Maybe not in our nature, maybe in our upbringing, maybe in our spiritual consciousness, maybe just because we don't want to seem like, in quotes, the bad guy or something. Do you think we over forgive? That's really the question as African Americans. Is that possible even?
It is possible, and we have been socialized. We have been socialized. Forgiveness is also a social construct. We have taught people how to forgive. We have taught people when to be offended. We have taught people when to say no. We have taught people when to say yes. And that's all within the social context of our struggle in society. So there are right and wrongs, and we have been socialized to know the difference between those two things. Just as the same, we have been socialized to forgive. We were the ones that were told, well, just hold your head down and keep walking. Don't look them in their eyes.
That's right.
You know, I remember going into a country store where I grew up, and I was with my dad. And I had ran into the store in front of my dad because I was trying to get to the little candies, right? And the people that owned the store didn't see me, the little short boys, scoot in. And they looked outside and said, look, there go Bob and he said, there go that nigger and his little nigglets. And I heard it.
Wow.
I heard it. So it was intentional.
Wow.
It was intentional. And these things that are happening are intentional.
Right.
Now, did I forgive? Of course I forgave. You know, and we returned to the store and all that good stuff. But let's not get that confused of what's really happening in our society today. So, yes, it's ingrained in us. It's been socialized. We weren't born with it. We were taught it. So, and that's one other thing, if I may add. And we were taught it to survive.
To survive. Yes. Such an important point. But can that be taken too far, though? We were taught to survive, but can we take it too far and keep, figuratively even, keeping our heads down so that we don't rock the boat? Is that possible?
Oh, yes, it is possible. Matter of fact, it is so possible that it's the norm. So when people do stand out like Kaepernick,
right,
then all of a sudden he needs to be lynched.
Yes.
You know, figuratively, of course. And he needs to be shunned and all this because he did what other people were feeling and thought, but he did it. He did it. He stepped out and did it. So he was not the guy that said, I'm just going to keep my head down and say, I'm forget it. I'm going to forgive it. He stepped out.
And that scares people. Sometimes it could scare people. Yes, we have activism and activist, but sometimes it can scare the average person to say, I saw what happened to him and her. Do you think I'm going to stick my neck out? And that's the unfortunate part about this.
Well, I disagree when you say sometimes it scares people.
Okay, good.
And I disagree because I want to make it more finite. It is scary.
Wow, okay.
It's not that it scares some people. It is scary.
Okay.
You know, when you step out there and put your whole career out there and what we do day in and day out, but even further, to put your life on the line, because we have some people that so vehemently disagree with, for example, Kaepernick, they would take that man's life. And he has gotten death threats. And there was other people that spoke out and stood up for racial equality or sexist equality and all these, trying to get rid of homophobia and all this stuff that have been targeted.
Right.
So it's not that it scares some people. It is scary to do it.
Very much so. Very much so. So how can we look at this in terms of this incident that, and there have been many, but this particular one that we're talking about, to start or continue the conversation saying, okay, it's a dark, looking at the history of it and saying, yes, a very dark chapter in our history, looking at the present, saying it's connected to that dark past of ours, but looking at the future and saying perhaps this is the conversation starter or one of the conversation starters that can start talking about the systemic racism and the inequality and the economics. How do you see it that way?
Well, I think that's exactly what those NAACP leaders were saying on the doorsteps of the South Capitol the other day. They said, let's look forward. Let's see how we can make lemonade out of these lemons.
That's right.
And move forward. And how can we make a better Virginia for all of our youth, regardless of their race, regardless of their age? How can we do these things? I believe that this is an opportunity as well. And I heard one of the callers say that in the first hour. Excuse me. One of the callers said this is an opportunity for us to get some things right and for us to be resourced and network in a proper manner. So this is that. So if we want to look forward, I think we should. That doesn't mean I have to forgive what you did and all of that. And it doesn't mean I have to ever break bread with you again. But it does mean that we can come together and look for a brighter Virginia.
Right. Now, I want to make sure that we emphasize a little bit. We've touched on it, and I know we've talked about, of course, Governor Ralph Northam. We mentioned a little bit of Attorney General Mark Herring, but not as much. Why do you think we haven't focused on him as much? He came out immediately, said what he had done. Is it because he seemed remorseful, contrite? Or he just wanted to say, I know you're going to find out anyway. Why haven't we focused on him as much?
Well, I think we didn't focus on him as much as because he doesn't have the position of governor. He's not the top guy. I think that's one thing. The second thing is he actually just said it.
Okay.
Northam was so confusing. He had blackface one day, he didn't have it the other day, he was moonwalking another day. I mean, where's this guy coming from? So there was so much confusion. And it sounded like to me that, people can say whatever they're going to say. I don't know if they're genuine or not. But it sounded to me the Attorney General was at least saying, okay, I screwed up. I see what happened to the governor. I've seen what this means. So instead of me laying down and waiting for this to come out, let me just go out first and say this is what it is. And to be honest with you, we should be more frightened with the Attorney General than the actual governor, because he's in control of the criminal justice system where a lot of us have a lot of issues.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. And then Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, I know it's a difference, but are we seeing it differently? Racism, sexism, where's the balance? Where do we find it? Should we be outraged? Should we be outraged there?
Yeah, well, we should be outraged. But I think the big difference is the criminality.
Okay.
We're dealing with a moral imposition and we're dealing with a crime.
Okay.
Those are two different things.
Okay.
And so people are going to digest it differently.
Okay. All right. So give us a call. Our number is 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. What do you think about all of this that has been going on with our governor, Attorney General, and Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax in terms of forgiveness from the Christian or spiritual perspective? And were you quick to say that the person that all three of them should resign, or do you believe that they should stay in office? 757-823-9110. So I think it's so important, Dr. Perkins, again, as we look at our leaders, what are their, not just the leaders, the three that we're talking about, but in terms of our clergy or in terms of our NAACP or Black Caucus or what have you, what now should we do?
Oh, wow, that is a great question. If you asked me that question 30, 40 years ago, we would have wrapped all of that into the Black community. And today we can't, because we're not quite sure who the Black community are.
Wow.
Back then we knew we were talking about those organizations you just mentioned, and HBCUs and Southern Leadership Conference and all that. But today the agenda is so scattered.
Wow.
Some people even argue that we don't actually have a Black agenda today.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, and so if we're not gathering together around a cause to create equality around a systematic or laws or whatever it is, then the question becomes, do you have a congenial group? Do you have solidarity among a particular community? And so that's where it is. Even with this particular issue, you see clearly there's a split.
There is a split.
It's a clear split, which is good because we're not a monolithic group.
But do we want solidarity? Do we want, I know we're not monolithic, and that is positive, and I agree with you on that. But is there a point of trying to rally together the various groups or so forth for the greater good, for the greater cause?
Should we do that? Is that what you're asking?
Right.
It would be great to do that, but before we do that, we have to have a consensus on what that cause is.
Okay, what the cause is.
And I don't think we have that. And that itself is a symbol of progress from where we were to where we are now in America.
And that's so interesting that you said that, because I was going to ask you that question. Was that the case before, and was that a good thing versus what it is now? So I'm inferring from what you're saying that yes, that is what it used to be, and that was positive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Why was it positive?
Why would I just say this positive? Well, it's positive because back then it was so crucial for everybody. It was life-threatening for the entire community, where there was no ambiguity about those situations. Today we can say, well, I don't see it that way. You see it that way. And a lot of that has to do with class disposition in our society, because we have a clear-cut black middle class, black upper class, black lower class.
Okay.
And so they play a big part into how people see different societal issues differently.
Okay. Now, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but what are the steps? What's next? What are the steps? Where should we go?
Dealing with these three issues on the top level of the government, I think we should just, first, you know what I think about Governor Northam. I think he needs to come back to ground zero. Matter of fact, I think he needs to appear on your show and have you interview him.
We welcome that.
Yes, I'm serious. He needs to come here, because this is where I met him. This is where a lot of our students, and the reason why I say that, because one of my former students was actually the chair of his youth campaign for the millennials. And so I know she's heartbroken when all of this came out. So he needs to come back here, get on the radio, talk to your constituency, talk to the people that put you in their office. And then you need to bring your attorney general and let us know that there is no bias, implicit bias in the policies that you're setting forth with the laws in the state of Virginia that is going to impact African Americans differently because you thought it was cool to be in blackface.
Amazing. Dr. Perkins, how can we find out more about you or contact you, just in case someone wants to know?
Yes, well, you can find me at on Norfolk State's campus in Brown Hall, room 203. My email is rkperkins@nsu.edu. And our website is sociology department at Spartan, at nsu.edu. Yes.
Very good. So we have had, and you just heard from Dr. Robert Perkins, the chair of the sociology department here at Norfolk State University. Earlier we heard from Dr. Eric Majette from Eric Majette Enterprises and the pastor of Thrive International Church in Virginia Beach. And lastly, licensed professional counselor, Mr. Lemuel Williams was with us earlier, National Counseling Group. So it really has been a lively and insightful conversation. But again, we can never do it without you. And so we appreciate your comments. We appreciate your call. We want to remind you that we are here every Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. and we always welcome your calls. If you have a topic suggestion and you want to get in contact with me, my email address is bkadams@nsu.edu. That's bkadams@nsu.edu. If you missed any part of the show or you want to hear it again or recommend it to someone, don't forget we rebroadcast the show every Sunday, 12 to 2. That's every Sunday, 12 to 2. So again, it's been such a pleasure being with you today. And don't forget, you can find us online at Hot 91, online, all aspects of social media. I'm Benita Adams. This has been Hampton Roads Voices, and thank you for joining us. The views and opinions expressed on this program are not those of Norfolk State University or WNSB FM. Thank you for listening.